From China butchering Snoop Dogg's design to a hilarious difference in GTA, these are video games changed around the world. Resident Evil 7 is one of the most brutal games out there, yet when players opened the refrigerator, they were not expecting to find the deputy's head.
Ugh, yuck.
Except over in Japan, they never got to experience the horror of this. Instead, when they opened up the fridge, it was now 2D, turning a horrifying moment into just a picture.
Bruh.
But PUBG Mobile doesn't even exist in China, and instead it's called Game for Peace. This is a special version you can only play if you live in the country, but there's a few major differences. Grenades are now called apples, you have the ability to play on swing sets, and most importantly, you can't die and instead just do this.
Bye, have a great time.
But of course there is one game that's totally different around the world, GTA 5. With the number of ridiculous moments in the story, someone was bound to change it, like how the main version lets you tattoo a questionable image on Laszlo.
How about I draw those 3 little pubic hairs on here too?
Now over in Japan, you're not really allowed to show things like that, so Rockstar came up with a hilarious and genius solution.
How about I draw those 3 little pubic hairs on here too?
And yeah, even some modern games like Spider-Man have some incredible differences. This time it wasn't to censor anything, and instead add a hidden reference. In the Japanese version of the game, whenever you throw down a decoy gadget, Peter has the chance of saying he's the emissary from hell. This is actually a reference to the catchphrase from the 1978 animated Spider-Man series that only aired in Japan.
Spider-Man.
And I don't even know how to explain this next change, but when Call of Duty added Snoop Dogg to the game, every single person loved it. They were rushing to dress as the iconic rapper, well, unless you were in China. Because in this version, Snoop went from this,
oh yeah, baby, that was dope,
to this guy. Honestly, this has got to be one of the worst changes I've ever seen. And if you've played DayZ, you'll know there's a wide variety of things to do, like growing special plants that aren't really allowed in most countries. Now, in the regular game, this would actually give you some benefits if consumed, but Australia immediately went nope and banned the whole game.
Nope.
To appease the government, the devs changed the devil's lettuce to something a little less controversial, a pear. And when it comes to South Korea, you'll look for a copy of Destiny 2, only to find Destiny Guardians instead. This is an exclusive version that's exactly the same, except it's built for Korean gaming cafes, and there's one difference. The Tess NPC, which sells microtransactions, has been totally replaced with a brand new character named Yuna. Instead of the Western release where Tess would only sell you cosmetic items, the South Korean version does not care about being pay to win. Yuna literally offers the most overpowered items in the game, allowing players with only a few hours to get the best loot. Kind of messed up, but also a genius way to make money. Except South Korea is also really strict with other games like League of Legends. In countries like the US, you can pay people to log into your account and play for you, boosting it to whatever rank you want. There's entire businesses around this, and if you're caught, the devs really don't care. Most of the time letting people off with a temp ban or warning. And yet in South Korea, you're required to use a personal identification number just to use the internet, so people know exactly who you are. This means that letting someone else use your account can literally land you a jail sentence of up to 2 years.
What?
But when the OG Smash Bros released, they had characters like Pokemon, which needed full localization. Wouldn't usually be a problem except for the Chinese version, because the anime didn't actually have Pokemon cries yet. So in their version of the game, things sounded way different.
Boo. Come on. What's it?
And while we're on the topic of China, games released in this country are notorious for removing skulls. It's considered very insensitive to show skeletons, and most of the time the developers straight up delete them. So in Super Mario Odyssey, while a majority of the players know about the pirate outfit, it is completely missing from China. Instead, they replaced this with the noble costume. This version has no eye patch, and of course the skull's been removed from the hat as well. And while China does not appreciate superstition, Germany really doesn't want to be reminded of a certain historical figure. So when Wolfenstein 2 was announced, it felt like this game would be impossible to release in Germany. Well, that's until the devs came up with a plan. While the international version would show the dictator, the Germans would just shave his mustache.
haben Sie keinen Respekt vor Autorität?
But what you probably didn't know is how the US has also censored video games. If you played the classic Mario Party 2, you might remember the part where you have a standoff against Bowser. Well, it turns out we're the only ones corking this guy, because in the original Japanese version, they straight up shoot real guns at each other. Yeah, they literally just killed Bowser. Now, I can't believe this was actually real, but back in the day, Infamous Second Son had the most insane pre-order bonuses I've ever seen. Well, at least in Italy, because anyone who purchased it at GameStop would receive 2 cans of Red Bull. Already pretty insane, but the cherry on top was glow-in-the-dark branded protection. Yeah, it's exactly what you think it is. These devs were trying to make sure we didn't get a second son. And you remember how GTA had to change a tattoo for Japan? Well, it's not the only game to cover up a drawing. The Last of Us 2 has some insane notes, but probably the most unhinged one is, well, I can't even show it on YouTube. Let's just say Japan didn't like it either, and instead covered up the explicit drawing with a hilarious redesign, changing it to tentacles. And sure, Australia banned DayZ because the official law says you can't glorify drugs in media, especially when it comes to giving things like health boosts. So when Saints Row 4 had an entire mission dedicated to tripping balls on alien juice, even a fictional drug was too much. This caused the Australian government to step in and force the devs into cutting the mission entirely or banning the game. But one of the craziest lines in all of gaming is when Uncharted 2's villain named his role models.
Genghis Khan, Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, they were all great men.
Yeah, major yikes there, and in the German version, they were fine with every single name except one. You can probably guess who's missing.
Genghis Khan, Saddam, Stalin, Pol Pot.
But things get even weirder in 2021 when Minecraft, one of the friendliest games out there, became R-rated in South Korea. Now, this wasn't because of some crazy adult-themed update or anything, it's actually because the game was technically against the law. See, South Korea has a Cinderella rule which bans children from playing games between midnight and 6 a.m. So to get around this law, Minecraft used to let you play with a Mojang account until they were forced to change it in 2021. This forced every single player to use their Xbox Live account, which you need to be 19 years old to have. All of this has basically made it impossible for Korean kids to play Minecraft, one of the most educational games in the country. And another embarrassing decision is how Mortal Kombat Deception had to change its name in France. Turns out the word deception in French roughly translates to disappointment. Yeah, the game would have literally been called Mortal Kombat Disappointment, and it's not hard to see why they changed it to Mystification. And I really don't know how to explain why this game is called Africa Around the World unless you bought it in Hong Kong, South Korea, or Southeast Asia. In that case, it's the exact same game, except for some reason the cover says Hakuna Matata. Yeah, just seeing these two boxes next to each other looks really goofy. And while playing Super Mario Galaxy, you'll hear Kamek tell Mario to... Well, that's unless you're Chinese, then you'll hear him tell Mario... Ouch, Nintendo! And things get even funnier in Mario Party 2. While the US version shows Professor Fungi as a regular old toad, this is actually censored. Over in Japan, the man is literally smoking on a pipe as he gives you instructions.
Nice.
Another classic character is Crash Bandicoot, and you probably remember one of his most iconic death animations. Well, if you ignore the fact it's a cartoon, this is actually pretty morbid. I mean, he does look like he's getting his head cut off. Now, Japan did not like the implications of this, so they replaced it with an even more cartoony death. Whoa! And those were video games changed around the world. It's been Sammy. Keep it here on T5G.